Without further ado, I am so honored to introduce my friend and podcast co host, Seth Odell. Seth is widely considered one of the industry's leading enrollment marketing experts. He brings over 15 years of education marketing experience at some of our sector's top institutions. Today, he is founder and CEO of Canahoma, the fastest growing digital marketing agency in higher education. And we are so excited that he is here with us today for the opening keynote. Seth, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the very generous introduction, Mallory. Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today. We are talking about the state of the state, a candid look at where we are and where we need to go. And so what I'm intending to do in our time together today is unpack a little bit about where I think the industry is today, and then obviously talk about where it's going to go in the future, and in particular, tie it back to what we can do as EDU pros and how it's going to impact our careers. So buckle up. You know, I talk fast, I cover a lot, and I'm excited to do that. So let's talk about the state of the state. First step, demand is down. This is no surprise to anybody, but demand for post-secondary education is actually down. Undergraduate enrollment declined 15% from 2010 to 2021. If you saw the data that came out last week, fall freshmen, so new freshmen this fall, fell a staggering 5% year over year. I think a lot of us are clinging to hopes that some of that is FAFSA fallout that will be temporary, but jury is out on that. There are a few areas that are rebounding, but almost all are not rebounding to pre-COVID levels. And we have a demographic cliff looming. So all in all, demand is down. We are not part of a growing industry. Second thing is at the same time, supply is up. So 98% of universities are now offering online courses, and the colleges, as you probably know, are launching new programs at a rate far faster than they're closing them. And so what that means is an increase in total supply in market for how many programs are available. So we have more programs than ever available before and less students to actually take them. So the result is an increasingly saturated market that has really a growing variety of options. So demand down, supply up. At the same time, we have increasing price pressure. So the cost of college really dramatically outpaced inflation, increased over 200% since 1963. And today, student loans at $1.6 trillion is the second highest source of consumer debt, only to mortgages. So the result that we're all experiencing is that consumers are pushing back on price. And so, 10 years ago, there was sort of a sense that people will pay almost anything for a college education. And we are now finding that the market is becoming increasingly cost conscious, which disproportionately applies pressure to private institutions that are typically priced higher than their public peers. In addition to increasing price pressure, we're also seeing a decrease in consumer confidence. And this is probably like the most concerning thing, at least for me personally. 65% of current college students report that higher education is not worth the cost. 49% of Americans say that a four-year degree is less important to getting a well-paying job than it was 20 years ago. And 32% of Americans say they have little or no confidence in higher education. Now, this is not new. It actually tracks back to the 2008-2009 financial crisis. So you see in this, the Google Trends screenshot to the right, there was no one searching, is college worth it? And then all of a sudden, really starting the financial crisis of 2008 and 9, it started to become a narrative, and it's only grown from there. And so we're seeing increasing price pressure at the same time that consumer confidence is arguably at an all-time low for higher education. At the same time that we're seeing decreasing consumer confidence, we're seeing a decrease in employer demand. So nearly half of all companies say that they plan to eliminate degree requirements for at least some positions in 2024. So this year alone, half of all companies are reducing degree requirements, not for all roles, but for many. And most of the nation's largest tech companies, whether it's Apple, Google, Netflix, Microsoft, they don't require degrees at all. And what we're seeing is a notable shift to skill-based hiring. It's obviously a clearer path for hard skills, which can be easier to assess, but it's clearly happening in the market. And this is critical because career-related benefits is still the primary driver of student interest in colleges and universities. So the primary reason people are getting a degree is because they believe it's a pathway to improved economic mobility and career success. At the same time, we're seeing that employers are decreasing the requirement on degrees. Now, there is some data coming out that doesn't mean that necessarily that they're not still hiring for degrees, but when employers stop demanding the degree and consumers have less confidence in it, it creates a pretty complicated marketplace to operate in. What we're seeing from the employer side then is really a growing skills gap. So 70% of corporate leaders are reporting critical skills gaps in their organizations, particularly around data analysis, AI, machine learning, software engineering, but also project management and other key operational roles that support and work around, in particular, tech skills. And that's really driving demand for really new and improved upskilling and reskilling solutions. But it raises the question about the role of higher education and workforce development. So when it comes to closing this skills gap, are colleges actually going to close it? Or are we going to see new entrants in space that are finding a way to do that? And in either case, it's a decreased reliance on the degree itself being the thing that can achieve it. And that's the reason we're seeing a decoupling of the degree. So the college degree is being broken up. There's growing demand for micro-credentials, individual courses, boot camps, certificates. We've all been following this trend. Of note, and particularly a scary figure, and this is a true fact, there are over 1 million unique credentials being offered in the US today. 1 million different credentials, and only a third of those are coming from colleges. Now, it's worth noting that that stat combines secondary and post-secondary, meaning there are a lot of high schools that have been offering credentials as part of getting a high school degree. But what we're seeing is an incredible saturation of the space, and in many ways, it's still the Wild West. When it comes to short form education, it is largely not regulated. It can be done in many cases outside of the need of accreditor approval, doesn't require financial aid. And so we have 1 million unique credentials being offered, all designed in different capacities to improve employability and close a skills gap. But how are employers be able to navigate that and figure out which ones are worth their salt and which ones aren't? But in either case, the degree itself, which the market is reducing confidence in, employers are relying on less, is being broken apart. The idea of sitting for 4 years for an undergraduate degree is still a path for some, but we're definitely seeing that it's not a path for many. One of the factors that we're seeing in breaking up the degree is a growth in dual enrollment. So if you're not familiar, dual enrollment is basically high school students being able to participate in college level courses or classes. Over a third of all US high school students have participated in dual enrollment, which I think is a wild stat. And dual enrollment is consistently growing. Several states have made big investments in this. Florida in particular is invested in dual enrollment, trying to get every high school student to take some form of college material. And it's really the primary driver behind undergraduate enrollment increases. So as I mentioned, we saw that freshmen this year in fall declined 5% year over year. But if you dug into the data, overall undergraduate enrollment appeared to be up. It's actually up from dual enrollment. So we are counting high school students that are taking 1, 2, or 3 courses as undergraduate enrollment, and it's really inflating the overall picture of what is the true undergraduate population. And it's the primary driver of why undergraduate enrollment appears to be growing, but I would caution that it's growing in courses, not in degrees, which from a revenue perspective is just fundamentally different for colleges and universities. Still a critical path. I'm a huge supporter of dual enrollment, but I think it's masking the reality of just how difficult and challenging the overall higher education enrollment landscape is getting. So what are colleges and universities to do? We're seeing continued growth online. In 2012, 75% of college students studied 100% on ground, but by 2022, more than 10 million students studied at least partially online. And today, 2/3 of colleges are prioritizing online as the primary growth mechanism. And there's kind of 2 paths to that. One is just improving the current student experience. The other is trying to open up and market to a different and larger student population, which is the non-traditional student above the age of 23, juggling work or family, has some professional experience. And so folks have moved into that space. The chart on the right shows the growth of what we kind of describe in our space as the mega universities. So that was sort of following the rise of the for-profits, which was the first wave. The second wave that really came was these mega universities, whether it's Southern New Hampshire, Arizona State, Grand Canyon, Western Governors. They saw significant growth really in the 2010s. But what we've seen is that growth has continued, albeit a little bit slowly. Folks don't always talk about it, but Southern New Hampshire University now has over 200,000 enrollments. There are over 200,000, and I really believe we are in a path with these mega universities to crest University of Phoenix's former height of about mid 400,000s at their peak. And I think there is a road forward where we may see a 1 million student institution in this country. And so what we're seeing is a consolidation of the market, because the question is, if Southern New Hampshire grew to 200,000 students, where did they come from? Well, we're not in a growing market. And so when you're in a mature market, the only way to grow is to take market share from someone else. And so what we're seeing is a consolidation of market share to a few large players rather than all players succeeding equally. That growth online has really led to a movement that we really describe as kind of the rise of the global campus. So colleges are increasingly investing in the creation and expansion of dedicated centralized campuses for online education. So historically, when online was launched, it was launched within schools, departments, colleges, in the areas of academic discipline that were looking to bring a program online. But what we found is that institutions are realizing they have to centralize their online offerings to be able to achieve operational efficiency to scale and to unlock kind of the benefits that come from marketing brand or area of study and clusters of programs. So this has included a lot of acquisitions that we've seen. Purdue Global, which came from Kaplan, University of Arizona Global Campus, which came from Ashford, University of Arkansas, which came from Grantham. Those were for-profit acquisitions that were converted to nonprofit. And what we're really seeing in particular in this move is a growth in publics. And so if you looked at that original mega university chart, for the most part, Arizona State outstanding, it was privates that made the move into the online space early. And we're seeing publics are making a larger move in a more centralized and intentional way, which opens up really kind of a new avenue of players in this space. Now, they say global campus, but what they really mean is online education for US students. But what we're seeing is there may be an emergence of a broader globalization happening. US institutions are increasingly interested in leveraging online to bring education abroad. Historically, that actually hasn't been possible due to price sensitivity in markets. So within the US market, we are arguably the least price sensitive market in the world, which means that you can charge a much higher price. And so you can charge $38,000 for an undergraduate degree online, which is a very reasonable price today, or you can charge $23,000, $25,000 for a graduate degree. Those are really like the aggressively priced folks in our space. But if you bring that into Latin America, as folks have attempted to do, it's going to be very hard, even with a US degree and the US brand and the credibility that can come from our post-secondary space, to drive enrollment for folks when you're asking them to cough up tens of thousands of dollars. What we're seeing is technology advancements are driving down the cost of delivery, though, which is increasing viability. There is one example, I may cite it again later, but there is a large institution, I'm not going to name them because I don't know if they want the attention for this, but that has leveraged AI significantly to reduce the costs that are associated with the delivery of education. And by doing that, they're able to bring an existing US degree internationally, leave it online, and charge about a fifth of the price that they charge in the US. And so we may see finally a true globalization of education. It's reasonable to ask, like, why is MIT not worried about being the world's largest educator in engineering? And historically, it's been constraints related to financial aid, and that the majority of our model is funded by the government in particular. But when you drive costs down enough from that price pressure and you do move online, it is possible potentially that we are in the very early days of a true globalization of the post-secondary space. At the same time that we're seeing that kind of emergence of the globalization trend, we're also seeing emergence of non-traditional educators. So when it comes to the fact that employers are increasingly focused on closing the skills gap, what we're seeing is that the folks that can do that don't necessarily have to be from traditional colleges or universities or be traditionally trained faculty members. So there's really growing disruption. I describe it in two categories. The first is established degree alternative providers, whether it's LinkedIn Learning or Masterclass, even Google. So there's large platforms that are offering their own education, their own certificates. Amazon offers their own certificates to their own employees. But there's also a rapidly rising volume of offerings coming from the creator economy. So that's coming from YouTube, folks offering courses on platforms like Kajabi or uploading to Udemy or Skillshare. When it comes to actually skill-based education, meaning I'm not looking for a 4-year liberal arts education, I'm looking for very specific skills, you can directly connect with some of the world leaders and either get that for free or at an incredibly affordable cost as an alternative. Now, it does not come with a formal degree, but as we're hearing, employers care less about the degree and the market has less confidence in it. And so we're seeing this rise and emergence of a whole world of non-traditional educators that really didn't substantively exist a decade ago. At the same time that we're seeing all this, we're also seeing people that are really opting out of a traditional path. And there is like a very real renaissance for the trades that's happening right now. So enrollment in vocational training programs is rising, while overall college enrollment is struggling. And vocational focused community colleges are actually up 16%. So when we talk about enrollment challenges and the demographic cliff, a lot of us have conversations about how community colleges may be disproportionately impacted. But those that are vocationally focused, meaning not pathing you to a traditional degree, but pathing you to most often like an actual trade, those are seeing growth. And in particular, the federal government has put up hundreds of billions of dollars, $100 million, funding Apprenticeship Building America programs. And so if you're not familiar, there are federally backed apprenticeship programs that the government pays for, where you can get an apprenticeship it's a partnership between employer, institution, and then student, where you can get an apprenticeship with a company, actively work, while actually getting trained in your trade, and the government will pay for all of it for you. It's completely free. And at the moment, the government can't actually spend all the money that it has. It has so many millions of dollars available, there are not not enough partnerships right now. And so what we're seeing is there's a massive renaissance for the trades and a rise in vocational. I've seen it described in the media as Gen Z becoming the tool belt generation. That movement is real. And we are seeing people that find this as a faster path to higher income, which challenges kind of the core selling point today of the degree, which is professional pathways. And so we're seeing that in many ways challenged. At the same time, what are institutions to do that are feeling that pressure? We are seeing declining selectivity across our space, in particular among private institutions. So private institutions that are under pressure are becoming less selective over time. So how do you maintain your incoming class if you are not getting more interested students? Is you lower your criteria for admission. And we are seeing that across dozens and dozens of institutions, but it's not just happening at small privates. Many elite business schools have been dramatically reducing the selectivity of their online MBA programs as well. So you can get into an online MBA program in the top 20 in many cases much easier than you could have a decade ago. And so institutions are looking at declining selectivity as a way to maintain volume and continue revenue, which works to an extent, but obviously there's a ceiling. And then when it comes to where is there a ceiling that we're bumping into, we're also seeing increased discounting. So facing increased enrollment pressure, a lot of institutions are increasing their discount rates, meaning maintaining their sticker price, but giving more and more off for scholarships to try to focus on yield and make sure that they're getting their classes. And so the chart on the right shows the rising discount rates of private Christian institutions that are part of CCCU. And what really remains unclear is how viable this strategy is and just how much further discounting can rise before proving unsustainable. You can increase your overall discount rate, but you're going to be decreasing your net. And so we're seeing institutions that are either operating flat or in some cases operating at a loss while still maintaining student populations. And so both of these feel a bit like a Band-Aid, but they're being applied across our space aggressively by many institutions as a way to, really at least maybe not head off the headwinds, but maybe last to fight another day. And so overall, what we're really seeing is winners win and losers lose. In a mature market, winners get consolidation and they get to pick up market share, and those that struggle, unfortunately, continue to struggle. So it's likely that mega universities are going to continue to grow. As I mentioned, I think we'll see multiple that are in the hundreds of thousands of students in the next 5 to 10 years. Also, we'll probably see demand for elite institutions likely rise, not decline. So as the kind of credibility of a degree is shifting in market, what we're seeing is that if you can get into a top 50 school, that brand is still incredibly valuable and can be traded on from a career perspective. And so we're actually seeing many elite institutions become increasingly selective at the time that their mid-market peers are not. And so when it comes to everybody else, what happens? Well, unfortunately for some, viability becomes a challenge that they cannot overcome. And so we are seeing a rise in mergers and acquisitions in our space. Between 2000 and 2018, the higher ed industry experienced 78 total mergers, so one or more institutions coming together. But in just the 4 years following that, from 2018 to 2022, that number rose and it was 95. So it more than doubled in the 4 years previous to the 18. And so there's definitely a rise in mergers and acquisitions in our space. Some of you may be involved in them. I've been involved in several myself. But it's important to note that as much as 80% of mergers actually fail to drive incremental enrollment. And that is figures from research that we did at Oklahoma. We went back and looked at all publicly available merger data and then pulled IPEDS enrollment. 80% of the mergers that we looked at, which were really the top, 12 of the past 6 years, did not drive enrollment. Many saw a decline and some were flat. But 80% of mergers fail in higher ed, and yet it is a common strategy for folks that have few options left. But not even everyone can work through a merger successfully, and so that's why we're also seeing a rise in college closures. So nearly 300 degree-granting college universities closed between 2008 and 2023, but today that rate is higher. We're looking at about 1 per week. So about 1 college university is closing now every week. It's important to note that nearly all closures are private. They're either from for-profit or nonprofit spaces, but they're not public. So there are some examples of public closures, but by and large, it's hitting the private sector. Obviously, the private sector is not being subsidized, although publics are barely being subsidized these days at all. But the privates are also typically priced higher. So they're the ones that are experiencing that price pressure firsthand, and that's why they're disproportionately impacted. And when it comes to disproportional impact, private Christian college universities are being impacted the most. So private Christian education, private Christian colleges make up 15% of today's higher education market, but they make up more than 50% of the recent closures. So 15% of the market representing more than 50% of recent closures. And so what we're seeing is that this market pressure is not going to impact everyone equally. If you look at the state of Vermont lost 20% of all institutions over a 5-year period recently because they were just so disproportionately priced and they were so small. So the smaller you are from an enrollment perspective, obviously, the quicker you're going to be impacted. And in many ways, I think Vermont is a bit of the canary in a coal mine, if that makes sense. And so what do we do with all this? Not trying to start this conference as a downer. I promise I'm going to get to the future in a minute. But there is a reality that we have to face. And something I typically tell a lot of higher ed marketers, myself included, is that we need to accept that today is the best day you're going to have for the next 10 years. And the reason is it only gets harder from here. Like all of the factors that we're discussing and all the pressures that we're experiencing are only mounting and increasing. And so today is the best day you're going to have for the next 10 years if you work in higher ed marketing and enrollment, because it only gets harder from here. So what are we supposed to do? Like, what are we supposed to do in an increasingly competitive, complex, consolidating, mature market where we are trying to drive growth at a time when the overall market is in decline? Historically, my advice to folks has always been win today and plan for tomorrow. And what I meant by that was win today. Focus on optimization, not innovation. Like focus from the bottom of the funnel up to just be better at enrollment marketing. Make sure that you are increasing your yield, increasing conversion. It's not that innovation is not critical, but innovation has a much longer value curve, meaning that the time it takes and the value it takes to launch versus the time it impacts can be quite long. And so historically, I have advised folks to focus on optimization, not innovation, while planning for tomorrow, meaning updating your offerings, like actually looking at the products themselves that you're offering, not just from an academic discipline perspective, but from a student experience perspective. Like you might say online, but is it synchronous or asynchronous? Does it rely on open education resources, or does it require textbooks that don't show up till the second week? Like update your offerings, invest in tech. Like you very well may need to make those CRM transitions or other tech implementations, but those take time, those take budget, those have implementation. And while you're winning today, make the case to make big bets. So ask for the investments in marketing that you can deploy. This has been my strategy. I've dropped on desks for 10 years. But there's just one problem with it, to be transparent. And it's kind of a big problem. When it comes to AI and technology and the evolution that we're experiencing, tomorrow is here today. And so the idea of waiting until tomorrow is just no longer a reality that we can face, because tomorrow is here today. It's no longer just about what we'll be able to do, but what we're already able to do right now. And that, to me, I think is what's so important to understand, is not just the things that we can do and the ways that we can apply AI and technology, but to understand how it's actually happening and playing out right now today. So the good news is that is what the AI Engage Summit is all about. For the next 2 days, you're going to be hearing how AI is transforming personalized learning, accelerating student success, informing evolution in student journey communications, powering innovation in predictive analytics, reshaping how leaders think about their work, and changing the way we work every day. And so we are in the right place. And that's important because we may be in the early days of AI, but make no mistake, we are in them. Like this is happening right now today and being deployed today by our own competitors to do better marketing, to drive better performance. And so it is no longer what is coming. It is much more a conversation about what is here. So when we think about all that and the state of the market today, it's worth asking, what is certain about our uncertain future? So like, what do we know about where we're going? Because so much of this does feel unknown. So I do want to share 10 things I think about when it comes to certainties in our uncertain future. The first is how we market is going to change. So AI is automating advertising across platforms. So whether it's Google Performance Max or AI-powered campaign optimizations, we are going to see paid media campaigns predominantly driven, optimized, and managed by AI, not by people. Now, if you've used Google Performance Max like I have, I'm not that excited at the results yet, but at the rate that AI is improving, we are maybe years away at most, potentially quarters away from that being a really powerful tool. And the reality is AI is going to automate advertising. The second is AI is making creative production and iteration near instantaneous. So we've all seen AI generated content. Each wave that comes out, it gets more and more impressive. We've talked internally at Kanahoma about the ability to use grok imagery and whether or not it's ready yet. But also there's multivariant editing. And so like Facebook's new video AI tool that's coming out that they just previewed is incredible. You upload your actual existing content, and then you just prompt it with changes. So imagine being an editor that says, this is a great shot, but I wish there was 2 students here and not 1, or I wish that they were doing X instead of Y. The ability to take actual original creative and then instantly iterate on it is going to mean that you can now effectively do almost anything without having to do an original production on it. Now, I do think what we're seeing is the idea that a base creative from an original production is incredibly powerful. So having an actual original content library is incredibly beneficial to base AI on. But the idea of variant editing is already here on some platforms. I mean, already today, we're able to reshape images automated across all ad platforms. It's just incredible how much it's changed creative production and iteration already. And the idea of like, oh, well, we don't have $1 million to do some huge brand campaign, that gap is going to close quite quickly. And then the third and probably most present is that AI is really changing the web experience. From improved site search to elevated live chat with effective AI agents on your website, you're able to deliver today with providers a totally personalized content experience that provides users with what they actually want. So much of my higher ed career has been built on managing large websites and then focusing on content navigation and discovery. Content navigation discovery is effectively solved by AI. And what we're seeing is that there is no longer a need to request more information because you can get the information you want right now today. So much so that like I believe that the RFI will die in the next 5 years. Like I think the idea of RFIs and leads will go away because people can instantaneously get the information they're looking for, customized, and then connect with someone only if or when they want to, or they can go ahead and complete the application if they're ready to apply. At the same time, how we do enrollment is going to completely change too. 50% of admissions offices are already today using AI as part of the review process, which is a staggering stat. So if you're in the wrong 50%, you might want to bring that up internally. But AI application review has been one of the earliest approaches, and it's incredibly simplistic, but it streamlines. It doesn't replace your team, but allows your team to focus on providing true coaching, counseling, and personal support rather than manual application review. The one I'm most excited about that I haven't seen solved yet, so if you have, send me a message. I'd love to know about it, is AI transcript collection. So there's over 40 million Americans with some form of credit and no degree. These are people who started college and did not finish. In order to re-enroll, they have to access their transcripts. And so depending on the size of your institution, you may rely on the prospective student to go get their transcript, or at a larger institution, there are transcript collection services that folks provide to go get the transcripts on their behalf. The ability to have an AI agent go out and collect transcripts on your behalf would immediately unlock access for folks that are currently in a place where they are just not able or not willing to track down their transcript to put them in a position to re-enroll. And that is going to be incredibly exciting. And then in particular, the one to focus on is AI agents. So already live today, there are companies that offer AI agents for pre-qualification, meaning they will call your inquiries on your behalf, they will pre-qualify them, and they'll transfer them to you. But the question I think is really important is if pre-qualification works, is full funnel next? And at what point do we get to a place where, first we're saying AI is going to support your existing missions team. At what point does it replace it? Like at what point does an agent become the one that works you all the way through the process? And I'm not saying I want that. I'm just saying that like it's hard to not see that coming when you look at the broader timeline and you look at the innovation that's happened to date. Third, probably most controversial, the future of teaching may just be technology. And so the role of professing is being passed to technology, and in a very meaningful way. So professors, why do we call them professors? We call them professors because they profess. And historically, they had to gather information, become the holders of that information, and they would profess and deliver that to those in front of them. But if technology is able to hold, organize, and deliver data faster and more intuitively than people, there's a question of what is the role of teachers. There is one institution today that I know of, that I'm not going to name because their president shared it with me in a conversation. I'm not sure if it's public. They actually took their faculty, they put them in a studio for 4 hours, and they built AI avatars of their faculty. And they're now using AI faculty avatars to actually do the instruction. And the faculty are now moving to intervention. So there's AI teaching college students today in our industry. That's already happening. So faculty are literally being turned into AI agents that are being used to instruct. Now, this doesn't mean that the future of teaching is technology. It doesn't mean that teachers go away. What it means is that teachers evolve from instruction to intervention. So it means that students self-pace through content, so they're able to learn at their own speed with technology. And as soon as they run into a problem or an issue or have a question, they can get support from teachers that are using an intervention model. We already saw this play out across competency-based education. So it's already what's going on at places like WGU. So it's now just being powered by AI. And so the idea is that literally our teachers going to evolve from instruction to intervention. It's hard to think that they won't. The idea that college lectures will even exist in 5 or 10 years is questionable. I think there are cases and places where you would want to be in a room with a very specific instructor to be able to see them or hear them. But if they're delivering information that is commoditized, which it often is for a lot of traditional undergraduate offerings, there's reason to ask why that content wouldn't be better delivered via technology that could also tailor that to you and ensure better outcomes. This is not a concept. This is already playing out in the K-12 space. There's an incredibly interesting school called Alpha School that has no teachers, and they only have less than 2 hours of daily academic actual instruction that is being delivered by technology, and that is already live today, and they already have better learning outcomes than their public institution peers. And so the way Alpha School works is there's no teachers, technology is the teacher. Students engage directly with information delivered by technology and tailored to them. They're able to achieve the same learning outcomes a school takes 6 to 7 hours to achieve in 2 hours. Then the question is, what do they do with the rest of their time? And what I think is really inspiring about Alpha School is the students are then working on complex original projects themselves. So the students are not like going home. They're just getting out of direct learning mode and they're getting into doing mode. And by actually doing, they're learning. That's when they engage with folks that are able to help them. And they're actually applying what they're learning. And so the fact that we already have school models today with no teachers and 2 hours of instruction that are achieving better learning outcomes is really wild to consider, but that is live right now. The fourth is education, like everything else, will be personalized. We're going to talk a lot over the next 2 days, most likely about the personalization that AI provides, whether it's tailoring content or communication. But it's important to know that we're not just talking about personalizing the experience. We're talking about personalized learning, meaning that the actual way that people learn can be customized and their education experience can be tailored to their unique strengths, skills, needs, and interests. We don't all learn the same. Some of us learn better with audio, with video, hands-on, with reading. And so today, our model has historically taught everyone in the same model, regardless of if that was a model that achieved your best learning outcomes. Personalized learning is going to be able to deliver that content in a way that is totally tailored. And it's important to consider that. It's basically precision medicine as a concept applied to higher education. And what that really means is the very foundation of our product is about to change. Like the idea that you're going to either have a lecture at an undergraduate level or in a graduate level have a teacher stand up in front of a classroom or an online course with standardized content that everyone has to read or watch. That all is going to go out the window. Maybe not for all of us, but for those that do, they're going to see improved learning outcomes. And so the very foundation of our product is about to change. Fifth, student support will be 24/7, 365 in real time. So you may be familiar with the phrase just-in-time resources. I learned about it during my time at Southern New Hampshire. The idea of just-in-time resources means that if you want to improve student success outcomes, you need to have resources available just in time at the point of friction for the student, which means if the student is working on their paper at 10 p.m. on a Friday and they've run into an issue, you need to have resources available to them right now, today. And folks are doing that. There are currently AI tutors, tools that are available. I know several mega universities that are offering 24/7 tutoring now with actual like international call centers available. But what's not being achieved today is the same quality of support being delivered every time. So it's not just in time, it's the same every time, just in time. That's what AI is going to be able to provide us to do, is to provide instantaneous and standardized support for students, which hopefully has the potential for a significant positive outcome for students. You know, some students that don't persist do so due to life events or financial considerations, but there are also some that struggle with specific academic pursuits, and it's their struggles they run into academically that cause them to not persist. I think that gap is going to close pretty dramatically when you consider that student support will be standardized, it will be advanced, it'll be personalized, and it'll be available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Sixth, probably next asterisk of controversial statement, AI assessment will be what breaks the system. So degrees are a really inefficient form of assessment. Like, what does a degree actually measure? Well, the first thing a degree measures is time, right? So colleges and universities use units because our model is built off of the Carnegie model, which basically is looking at how much time you spent. So the Carnegie unit method measures time, not learning outcome. And so degrees basically say, yes, you spent this much time on these units, and then your GPA is a pretty bad general standard of, okay, overall, here's your learning outcomes. But does that really help an employer understand the specific skills gaps they're going to close? No, because college and university degrees do not assess at the skill level. And what they do is they measure time and overall general GPA, which is not exactly what folks are actually looking for. What AI provides is a potential opportunity for a far more effective form of assessment. How do we actually assess if someone has learned specific learning objectives down to the course level, down to the individual's daily session? And then how do we communicate that assessment to others? There are already today AI assessment startups. So this is happening, but it is not achieved, in my personal opinion. But when AI assessment does get to a place where it's not just effective, but accepted, it will break the system that we have. And I want to back that up and just make sure I'm clarifying this because it's very important. The disruption to the system will come not when the solutions are effective, but when they're accepted. What I mean by that is you may be able to effectively assess someone's learning outcomes and someone's skills, but until the overall employer market recognizes that assessment, values that assessment, and seeks that assessment out, the current system will continue to exist. And so the question is, who is going to break the assessment model with AI and break through from a brand perspective to be seen as the appropriate authority to be able to actually deliver that level of assessment? Until that happens, the system will be slow to break. System constraints are going to insulate the present model. So I'm talking a lot about like, where are we going? But the reality is things are going to both move really fast and also really slow because there are system constraints in place that insulate the present model. So the first is reliance on financial aid, which bolsters demand for traditional degrees. So financial aid from the government available to students requires institutions to be Title IV eligible and have an OPEID number that allows them to access financial aid. There's a large system in place that restricts that and only allows it for properly accredited degree offering institutions. And so right now, if you want to access financial aid, so if you want to be able to pay for college with federally backed student loans, you by and large have to do that with traditional degrees. You're not going to be getting a federal loan to go to a boot camp or go take a course online, except the Department of Education has been piloting exactly that. And so there are pilots in place that are happening now to see if we can offer students the opportunity to access federal financial aid to pursue education that is not, in the end, resulting in a degree. That right now is a pilot, but when that opens up and we tell the market, you can get federally backed financial aid and you can apply it to things besides a college degree, there is a potential when you consider the consumer confidence decline in the degree that we're going to see a significant drop in enrollment far beyond what we're expecting to see from the demographic cliff. Further, until price comes down, which we're seeing price pressure in market, residency restrictions will continue to drive demand on ground as well. So international students that want to come to the US have to have residency requirements. So they can't necessarily just come and study 100% online. By and large, they historically have had to come and have a residency of a large portion of their program available on a campus. Also, if you support military students, historically, the GI Bill has offered a housing stipend, and the housing stipend differs based on whether you're studying on campus or online. And so that means that if you study on campus, you can in many cases get $1,000, $2,000, or $3,000 more per month as a housing stipend because you're studying on campus versus online. If or when that fully is rolled out and changed, which has been discussed, it was temporarily changed in COVID. If that is fully shifted, I think we're going to see a significant shift of military students in particular, given how much they have to move for professional demands. We're going to see that population migrate much more fully online than they already are, which they are today. And so there are systems in place within our system that insulates and protects it. Financial aid access, GI Bill, housing stipends, residency requirements. But if you break those things or take them out pretty quickly, I think we're going to see a watershed moment as far as where demand goes and whether it is even to traditional institutions or to traditional degrees or not. Number 8, we're going to see an increased reliance on third-party partners. So institutions are going to architect but not build, meaning college universities aren't going to go build their own solution. And so they're going to end up either deepening their relationship with a few sources, like partnering with their CRM partner who's going to provide a wraparound amount of AI services, or they're going to move to basically an increased volume of narrowly focused solutions, meaning you're going to go get an AI transcript partner, an AI agent partner, you get an AI for instruction. So you're either going to end up with like one partner that does it all, or you're going to end up with a dozen partners applied across your business. In either case, it's an increased reliance on third-party partners. And in either case, what's really important to understand is that proprietary data will be even more valuable. So publicly available data has largely been the first wave of training data for AI. So it's been built off of what's available on the web. But your data at your organization institution is probably more valuable than you realize, especially when it comes to R1 institutions with research or health-related institutions. But in all cases, the data you have is proprietary, and it's not currently feeding AI models. And perhaps the most critical question for institutions today to have a point of view on is, who are we going to provide access to our data, and how will it be used? Because the data that we have is an incredibly valuable asset, and we have to be very strategic in who we allow to have access to it and build on top of it or learn from it. And finally, it's important to remember that only some of the players will change. Mega universities are going to continue to grow, albeit perhaps more slowly. Elite institutions are going to grow increasingly selective. AI is unlikely to save currently struggling institutions. I think if folks move quickly and apply it in the appropriate ways in the funnel, it's definitely possible. But I don't think we're going to suddenly see a big uptick in overall mid-market players. And so that really means for those mid-market players that's the organizations to watch. We're going to have to watch the close rate, and we're going to have to see how folks are or not innovating, and if it can, in fact, make a difference. I think by and large, the table has been set. There may be a few cases where the players will change, but I think by and large, they actually won't. So what are we to do if that is the world that we're heading to? There's a few things I want to share. The first is, if you're an EDU pro, I would recommend that you advocate for evolving consumer expectations. So we all know this, but how consumers experience change, it happens across industries, and it's going to directly impact students' expectations of colleges and universities. And so we need to be aware of what's changing elsewhere to bring those insights in-house. The innovation that we're going to experience is going to come from other markets. And so often in higher ed, how can we learn from other markets and adopt those lessons and apply them into our world? That is a core thing to focus on. And each of us can do that just by being more aware of how our own consumer experience and expectations change in the way that we engage and act with others online. So that's the first one for sure. The second is, be the linchpin in the in-house AI oracle. So this isn't just a technology arms race, it's a knowledge race too. So kudos for being here, for spending the afternoon and tomorrow learning about this, because what we all need to be able to do is to be ready with answers and insights now when questions arise. This can be a breakout moment for folks on this call, wherever you work. For those of us that were around in the emergence of social media in higher ed, I think there's actually like parallel lessons here. Which was, a lot of us made our careers as very early employees in being the primary folks driving the adoption of social media at institutions that historically were slow to adopt, right? That was myself at UCLA, many others. I think even Mallory had a heavy role in that. It's very similar. Like, what we need to do is to be the source of knowledge and experience as much as possible, so we can be in a place to provide value to our organizations, because people's careers are going to be made on how they handle the next 2 years. The third is, don't ask permission. Parentheses, if you don't have to. If you have to, I get it. But don't ask permission. The first question we should all be asking when it comes to AI and integrating it into our own work is, what can we do without permission? And immediately do that. Like, just go. Don't ask permission. Do and apply the things you can. Or, probably said better, because so many AI tools these days do come with a $20 a month subscription or something similar, is what can you do with only the permission of your budget manager? Like, what can you get away with trying yourself? And the reason that's important is that we need to focus on how we can show and tell. The worst thing we could do is, leave a conference like this and go back and tell everybody, here's what we need to do, and not have something to show for it. Be able to actually say, hey, by the way, here's this thing I did, and here's how you leveraged or utilized AI to actually execute my own tasks, and show people and walk them through the benefit of what is already happening, rather than telling them about what may come in the future. So how can you show and how can you tell, I think, are critical components. There are two more things I think that EDU pros need to think about when it comes to this conversation. The fourth is to remember that our job is to feed the machine. So our job is not to beat the machine. There's going to be a subset of our market that's going to say, we don't need AI, we don't trust AI, we can do this on our own. That is not the place to be, where you're going to fight this and say that we're going to beat the machine. We're going to face it head on. We don't need it. That is not a good place to be. But the second one is, it is not our job to build the machine either. By and large, with few exception, colleges and universities should not be in the software development business. Colleges and universities, despite some of them investing in it, are not going to be the source of AI innovation. By and large, it is going to be coming from outside organizations that are well-resourced, well-staffed, and working at a far faster pace. So what is our job? Our job is to feed the machine. Not beat it, not build it, but feed it. And what I mean by that is both feeding it business logic and strategy and prompts, and then proprietary data. And the ability to actually focus on our role as feeding the machine, I think, focuses what we can do and what's within our sphere of our own influence. And the fifth one, personal one, choose your employer wisely. Not everyone is going to win. The market is getting shaken up. And in the next 10 years, I think it is going to look different outside of those large mega U's, outside of those elites. For folks in the middle market, it's going to be different, and not everyone's going to win. And how your employer does over the next 5 years is going to impact your own professional narrative. Nobody wants to have, a head of marketing at a closed institution on their LinkedIn, right? My heart is out to those that have been through that, and I've seen phenomenal marketers go down with the ship, but it's not a great look, and it's a difficult one to overcome. And so what you should do is understand your sphere of influence within your organization. It's not like any of us can just turn around and have access to, our boss's boss or a president or a chancellor or a cabinet or a board, but understand how far does your sphere of influence work, and then be patient, but practical. What I mean by that is understand these things take time. You are already farther ahead than most of your peers because you're right here, right now, investing the time and thinking about this. So be patient, but also be practical in the fact that you need to make sure you're playing a winnable game. And what I mean by a winnable game is you need to make sure that you can win, or at least there's a possibility and ideally a probability that you will. If you can't, maybe find another team to play for. So choose your employer wisely. So where do we go from here? First off, you're in the right place. Sit back, relax, enjoy the next 2 days. Some amazing talks lined up. I'm really excited to be a part of it. Second is take notes, but also make plans. So don't just take this as I'll absorb this and in 4 months I'll worry about this. We got to have action plans, even if it's just I want to go learn about X or Y or test something. Take notes and make plans. Third is surrender to the uncertainty. Man, this can feel so stressful. All the chaos going on in our market, the pressures we're feeling from folks internally. Surrender to the uncertainty. We must accept the realities of our present state. It's the only way we're going to enjoy it. And remember that alignment precedes action. So don't just run out of this conference and go ask someone to do something. Now is the time to have coffees, have conversations, slow down and build alignment, even when you feel the pressure of moving fast. This can be as exciting as we want it to be. And that I think is the most important piece is it's going to be a mindset decision from all of us is if we're going to come into this from a place of fear or if we're going to come into it from a place of excitement. And I think a little bit of fear is definitely valid and worth it, but this can actually be exciting. And so when I think about trying to put it in perspective, for me, I'm reminded of a really great quote from Clayton Christensen. He's the author of The Innovator's Dilemma, phenomenal book, still very relevant today, but it's actually in his book, How Will You Measure Your Life, that he says, I had thought the destination was important, but it turned out it was the journey. And I think that's really important because with AI, I think we could definitely think, oh, we need to do X or Y and then we'll get there. But there is no there to get to. And the reality is there is no finish line. So we are not in a sprint. We are not in a marathon. We are in an endless, infinite game that will never finish, where there is no finish line. So don't apply so much pressure to yourself that you think you have to get your organization to some place and then it'll be okay. Because by the time we even get to this conference in a couple of months, the landscape's going to change, things are going to evolve, and it's moving far faster than we can. So understand that you are playing a game with no finish line. And if you can embrace that and have a little fun, I think this can be probably the most exciting chapter of any of our careers, which is one that I'm particularly looking forward to. So I want to thank you all so much for the time today. I really appreciate it. Loved having a chance to chat with you. I'm going to pass it to Mallory to see if there are any questions worth addressing, and just otherwise my gratitude to you all for your time and attention. Please know that I sincerely appreciate it.
Seth, that was incredible. You will not believe the number of people in the chat room who are requesting your slides or asking for the recording to, be available as soon as possible, because I think everybody wants to, I think everyone was writing furiously, right? But there's been a lot of mentions about how we need to send this presentation up to our leadership because this is what's going to help convince them. So thank you so much for setting the stage for the next 2 days of learning. And folks, just so everyone knows, we're building out a landing page so that everything is super easy to access, the slide decks, the recordings to every session. And I promise we will do our very best to expedite this one in particular so that you can share this with your leadership and your colleagues as soon as possible. Now, we have about 6 minutes for Q&A, and I do have a number of questions that have been dropped in the chat room. So we're going to bounce around just a little bit. Brittany actually asked the first question. It was way back when you were sharing information about increases in community college enrollment. And she was just wondering if the stats that you shared are accounting for dual enrollment numbers as well?
Mm.
This was on like slide 2 of your
Phenomenal
200%.
question. I will need to dig into the methodology. I am almost certain dual enrollment is included in that figure, but I'll need to double check the actual source methodology. That is a great call out.
Amazing. Brian Piper asked a question just a few minutes ago, and this is a big one. So we're going to take the swing. How do you convince higher ed leadership that AI integration is an initiative that will require dedicated resources and funding and can't just be added on to the existing positions as another hat that we have to wear?
Oh, phenomenal. So I'm going to give potentially a bad answer, but the honest answer is, can you get to any board members? Because the way this innovation is going to happen is pressure from boards on presidents and chancellors to say, what are you doing with AI? And the president is then going to turn around and say, I need to have an answer. And it can't just be applying one tool over here or one tool over there to that point of a totally decentralized approach. I do think it's at a minimum centralized strategy and thought leadership is needed. So ideally get to a board member and tell them, hey, go ask for this. If you can't do that, then I think it's kind of have that conversation of just saying like, the leadership is going to be looking to us for this, and we need to make a larger investment. But candidly, what we need is leadership to feel pressure from the outside market, from their peers, or from their own board members. And when they do that, I think they're going to realize that this is actually the time to do the big initiatives. Not half the big initiatives we're all assigned to do. Like, this is actually the time to organize and invest.
At the Engage Summit in Raleigh this summer, Jeff Salingo was our closing keynote, and he was likening the moment that we are in right now to the internet in 1995. Yes. And I know you kind of likened it to the rise of social media, which I completely agree. Like, these are the career defining moments. But I think similarly to how higher ed maybe treated the internet back in the day or social media 15 years ago, like, we cannot afford to ignore artificial intelligence because all these other industries aren't ignoring it, and we're going to be the ones that fall behind. So along those lines, Seth, Besnick is wondering if there's any specific AI tools that you would recommend right now.
That is a great question. I can say I can only actually recommend the AI tools that like I have personally worked with. So I don't feel I'm in a place to make recommendations specific to the institution side. So, I mean, I use ChatGPT literally every single day. I use the pro version of that. In particular, we have some tools I can get from our team that we use for like automated site optimization specific to AI tags. I can pull that for you. We've used 11 Labs, a few others, but I don't think I'm in a place now to say it's one partner over another. There's a couple I'm excited about, but I'm just cautious I worry if I say them, they'll come off like an endorsement, and I don't think I'm fully there yet.
That's totally fair. Hey, and you know what? I can endorse. I got to say, go check out Element 451. Like, it's literally the best AI tool on the market for higher education, arguably the only real AI tool on the market for higher education. So, and I feel comfortable saying that one. All right.
I'll say that's the one I'm most excited about, transparently, mostly because I think institutions are going to have a very hard time managing a lot of partners. And I think the idea of bringing on 10 or 15 different AI partners for different pieces of your business is a mistake when you consider the lift that comes with implementation and the need to be able to track data across it. It just feels like a mess to me. And the idea of having a single beefed up centralized partner, to me, feels like strategically that's the bet that I would make if I was a college president.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. This is a question from Jeanette. She's wondering how AI can be integrated within interventions. I believe this is like interventions with students who need more resources. Yeah. So like the human element, right? Like, are we just replacing it with something that's very robotic, or should the future be more of an integration?
So there's a couple ways. One is when it comes to student intervention, sometimes what students need is information, and other times what they need is access. Like, they just need to be told what to do, or they need to access something they don't have. And so one is, I do think like AI agents from like a chat perspective in particular is powerful. So students just have a study buddy they can chat with and say, I'm struggling with this, or what do I do with this? Beyond that, though, I think the idea is to predict struggle. So one of the things that I've seen done, not with AI, but already, is how can you predict based on how long students spend in certain pieces of their coursework in the LMS that you can actually figure out they're struggling before they ask. Today, the model is built on raise your hand and you get help. But what if the model can be built on, we'll know before you raise your hand you need assistance, and we will proactively pop up, hopefully better than the little clicky from Word. But like, there will be some kind of proactive integration. To me, that proactive implementation is where we'll see much more improvements in student outcomes.
That's fantastic. And I think spoiler, Artist Cadu is likely going to be talking about the shift from reactive to proactive in his keynote, which opens up day 2 tomorrow. All right, folks, we are at 12:58 Eastern. There were some questions that we didn't get to, but I do appreciate everybody who is in the chat room. I just heard from my producer that he says we may be able to turn this keynote around today. Don't hold us to it, but if this Zoom recording processes quickly, we may just be able to get this one out very quickly. So we're all going to send the good vibes to Zoom and to Kevin, right? Because Kevin is the unsung hero in that one. All right. So Seth, one more time, just thank you so much for unpacking where our industry is and really setting the stage for the rest of the summit. And friends, we are officially wrapping up this opening keynote. Now, for the next 2 hours, we have 4 fantastic sessions coming up with Dr. Ray Lutsky, Dr. Carrie Phillips, Jamie Boggs and Timothy Davis, and then Dr. Allison Tercio. I'll be hanging out in the chat room with all of you while we listen to these engaging, quick hit sessions. And then you'll see me again right around 3 p.m. Eastern with Ashley Budd and Diana Kibbolds to close out this first afternoon and talk about mastering email with AI based on their best-selling book, Mailed It. Very excited for that one. And spoiler, you're going to get access to a custom GPT, so you do not want to miss this one. Folks, let's all move rooms. We're going to join Ray in his session, and we will see you soon, Seth. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody. See you soon.